Hi everyone, today we are going to learn how to create equations of linear functions using slope-intercept form. Alright, so slope-intercept form we should know pretty well by now. It is y equals mx plus b. So there are two things we need to make an equation in this form. As the name implies, the first thing we need is the slope, which is represented by the variable m. So if we have the slope of your line, all we need to do is substitute it where we see m. The second thing we need is the y-intercept. So remember, that's where your line crosses the y-axis, and this value is represented by b. So if you can find these two things, all you need to do is substitute them for m and b, and then you have an equation. So let's try to make equation for these two lines. Let's start with the red line first. So the first thing we can do is we can look at it and we can find the slope. So remember, the way you find the slope by looking at your line is by looking for rise over run. So here, remember, we always do rise first, and then we do run. You could draw in a little triangle. So I can see that since we're moving down, our rise is -2, and then our run is 3. So for m, it's always rise over run, so it's going to be -2/3. Remember, it's always rise over run. The second thing we need to make our equation in slope-intercept form is the y-intercept. So remember, this is where your line crosses your y-axis. It's really common for me to see people pick the x-intercept, but remember, we only want the y-intercept for this form. So let's go ahead and circle it. Let's circle our y-intercept so we know exactly where it is. Let's even label it. This is our y-intercept. So I see this value is 2. So our b value is going to be 2. Now all I need to do is write it in slope-intercept form. Y equals m times x plus b. So -2/3 x plus 2. All right, now let's try to write the equation of this blue line. So let's start by finding the slope. Let's go from here to here. So remember, you pick any two clear points, and then you draw in your little triangle. I see that my rise is 1, up 1, so it's positive, and my run is 1. So my slope is 1/1, which is just 1. Let's now find our y-intercept, so it's where your line crosses the y-axis, so I see it right here. Let's circle it, and let's label it. This is our y-intercept. So I see that it is crossing the y-axis at -4. So our b value is -4. So let's use our slope-intercept form now. We have y equals m, which is 1, times x plus b. Since it's a negative b value here, this time we're going to do minus b. Now, this is okay for a step, but our final equation should not have that 1. Remember, when we have a coefficient of 1, we don't write it. If you just write a single x, it's implied that there's only one of them. So our final answer should just be y equals x minus 4. All right, go ahead and pause the video and see if you can make the equation of this new line. We'll check our answer in just a moment. All right, go ahead and check your answer. I can see here that my slope is -2/1. Make sure you have noticed that it is a negative slope. Now, -2/1 is just -2, so that's what we're going to use in our equation. You can also see that our y-intercept is at 0, 0, so our b value is 0. Now, when you do y equals mx plus b, it's okay to show this in a step, but we never really say +0 or -0, so our final answer should just be y equals -2x. All right, so we just learned how to write an equation by looking at a graph, but we should also be able to write an equation by looking at a table of values. So we still need to find the same two things. We need to find the slope and the y-intercept. So let's start by finding the slope. So remember, from a table, we're just going to do change in y, or delta y over delta x. This is just our rise over run, but just remember it's always change in y in the numerator and change in x in the denominator. I also want to remind you when you're finding these, what you're doing is you're comparing the change from one y value to the next. However, you need to make sure it's matching on both sides. So if I'm going from the second to the third, I need to make sure it matches on the other side. So to go from 2 to 0, I see that we are subtracting 2. So my change in y is negative 2. So that's going to go in the numerator of my slope. Now, the change in x, going from 0 to 1, we're adding 1. So delta x is positive 1. So here our slope is negative 2 over 1, which is just negative 2. Now we need to find the y-intercept. So I want to remind you that the y-intercept occurs when x is equal to 0. That's how we actually find our y-intercept. We set x equal to 0. So I'm looking at our table and I'm wondering, when is x equal to 0? So here it is. This is when x is 0. This is our y-intercept. So my b value is going to be 2. Now be really, really careful. It'd be very common for me to see a lot of students say that this is my y-intercept because they see a 0. However, this is actually an x-intercept. Remember, for y-intercepts, we only want a y value, so it's when x is equal to 0. So our b is equal to 2 in this case. So be really, really careful finding your y-intercept. There might be a number in there to trick you. So I have m and I have b, so now I just need to do y equals mx plus b. Y equals negative 2 times x plus 2. All right, last one. Pause the video and see if you can find the equation of the line represented by this table. All right, let's check our work. If I am finding delta y, I see that from here to here we're adding 1. So delta y is 1. From here to here we're adding 2. So delta x is 2. So our slope is 1 over 2. I found my y-intercept by looking where x is equal to 0. So here my y-intercept is negative 2. And then I just plug it into my slope-intercept formula. Y equals mx plus b. So this is the equation of the line. All right, that is all for today's lesson. Thank you so much for watching.